Initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, July 12th, and you are listening to episode 269 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So how's everyone doing this week? Quiet week at home for me. I guess I'll just use this as a PSA for coronavirus. Wear a goddamn mask. All right, that's enough from me. What's in store for this week's show? First, I want to quickly talk about the July 8th PC game update. It was small, but there was one major fix to it. Then I want to do a quick PSA on the recent Nvidia drivers and how they relate to Planetside 2. Then I want to dive into vehicle hacking, and then I'm going to finish up this week by talking about Arshee's debate night stream that just happened recently. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So first up this week on July 8th, we had a PC game update. And, you know, PS4 folks, please be patient a little bit longer. There's been quite a few tweets from Andy Seitz recently saying that they're working on stuff in the background. And it sounds like from his tweets that they're getting really close to having a build ready for PlayStation 4 Planetside 2 players. I think it's going to be an exciting time for you guys once that actually happens. But again, this stuff I'm going to talk about now is just PC related. So starting with the Ordnance Dampener, this is the deployable that you can purchase via Merit. They dialed back the particle visuals a little bit. Obviously, a lot of people complained that it was too much like snow in the air or fireflies in the air and everything, and it was degrading performance for some people, so they dialed that back. They also dialed back or fixed the self-exclusion radius. It used to be 5 meters, now it's 8 meters. And they also increased the merit cost from 20 to 25. So that's everything regarding the Ordnance Damper. Then there were some other bug fixes, and like I said, there was a huge one, and that would be the issue that allowed Punisher Repair Underbarrel to repair infinitely. That has been fixed as of July 8th. So if you have been not playing Planetside 2 because of the repair bug that was going on, and if you watched my YouTube videos last week, I showed you how to basically replicate it instantly, and I did it in game and went on as a max and killed a whole bunch of people as I repaired nonstop. So it was way overpowered, made me not want to play the game, made a lot of people not want to play the game. So the fact that that has been fixed and is no longer happening in game is huge. Next, they also fixed an exploit that was used to obtain infinite outfit resources in Sanctuary. I wasn't aware of this one. I guess anybody who was producing it kept it quiet so as not for everybody to learn how to do it, but that has been fixed. They also fixed a timing issue where certain consumables would not be consumed while activating Infiltrator Cloak. I hear that something's a little buggy with Infiltrator Cloak as a result of that, so stay tuned for that. They fixed the Zealot Overdrive engine, you know, the VS Max Zoe, so that it now has visual effects once again, and then they made some additional improvements to voice chat. I can say voice chat stuff. I've really had no issues with voice chat recently within the game itself. So again, that was the entire PC game update. It was very small, but again, fixing the Punisher Repair Underbarrel Infinite Repair is probably the most important thing they could have done in the game this past week, so I'm glad that they jumped on it and did fix it. And I know a lot of people complained that they took too long to fix it, but I mean, come on, guys. Let's be a little more patient on things like this, because it did get fixed, and I have to say pretty quickly, honestly. I think it probably took about a week to fix it, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, isn't terrible in the amount of time frames. But again, that's it for the PC game update. Let's move on to our next topic. So like I said, this is just a PSA more than anything else. Right now, there are some issues with the two most recent rounds of Nvidia drivers. A lot of people are complaining that they're getting freezes and hangups, like a 3 to 6 second micro freeze. So if you have not updated your Nvidia's drivers, I would say at this point to hold off on it, because even Nvidia has admitted that there is an issue with these drivers regarding freezes in Planetside 2. It's actually not just Planetside 2. It's actually a couple different games. And the specific note from Nvidia is several games randomly freeze for a few seconds during gameplay. Affected games include Assassin's Creed Origins, Planetside 2, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Assassin's Creed Syndicate. It's interesting that it's Planetside 2 in a whole bunch of Assassin's Creed games. I wonder what Planetside 2 has in common with those different Assassin's Creed games. I wonder if somebody can do a little digging and figure out what the commonality is between those three, because that would actually be kind of interesting to see why it's affecting Planetside 2 in addition to various Assassin's Creed games. But back to the issue. Again, if you're having micro freezes in the game right now and you know that you upgraded your Nvidia drivers recently, it is probably a good idea to roll back your drivers. The most recent stable one that people seem to be reporting is 446.14. So if you can go and find those old drivers, then uninstall all your drivers. You probably want to use a program to uninstall, like display driver uninstaller. What's a DDU? I mean, I've used that one in the past with excellent results. It'll go in and completely uninstall all drivers that you have on the system and just leave it fresh. And then you can go back and install the 446.14 drivers. And it seems like that has fixed most people's stuttering within or micro freezes within the game itself. I got lucky, and I have not updated my NVIDIA drivers to the most recent ones. I'm still using 446.14, so I am not planning on doing any update in the near future until I hear people saying that they're no longer having trouble with NVIDIA's latest drivers. So again, more than anything, this is just a PSA to watch out for that, and especially if you're having issues within the game itself, that's how that you can correct it at this point. Now let's move on to our third topic this week. So third up this week is vehicle hacking. There's been a large resurgence of people talking about vehicle hacking within the game itself, because people have spotted prowlers and vanguards and mag riders within the game being used by the other faction. And it's actually rekindled the idea of why can't we have vehicle hacking within Planetside 2? If you're a Planetside 1 player, you remember that there was the option of the infiltrator type class to be able to hack enemy vehicles. And when you did that, it turned the vehicle your faction's color, and you could actually use it. So it wasn't uncommon to have mag riders fighting mag riders, prowlers fighting prowlers, vanguards fighting vanguards, all over the battlefield. I mean, it happened. Granted, everybody had to be out of it. They had to be repairing it, and then somebody had to come along and hack it out from under them or kill them while they were repairing it. So it was always good to leave somebody in the vehicle, so things like that didn't end up happening within the game. But now something similar, but not 100% similar, is being is happening within Planetside 2. So I know a lot of people are curious how to quote unquote hack an enemy vehicle, and this technically isn't really hacking because you need two people. So first you need someone who has membership and is playing as an NSO character, and you also need one person that's on the faction of your choice. So let's use an example of the New Conglomerate and the Vanguard. Now, what you do is you log into your NSO character, you get placed on New Conglomerate, you get your friend to spawn a Vanguard and drive it to a safe place outside the Warp Gate's pain field, and then you have your NC buddy log out. And then you wait a few seconds, get in the Vanguard, and it should transfer ownership to your NSO character. If not, keep getting in and out until you have access to the page down menu. Then you need to cycle continents on your NSO character until you return as a different faction. Then you can go back, find that Vanguard, hop in, it will change colors, and it's now your faction's Vanguard. Again, people are asking how to recreate this. This may or may not be bannable. I don't think that it's bannable within the game itself. The devs might introduce some sort of fix for this so that it can't happen, but the fact that it is happening, and it's happening more and more within the game itself, I'm seeing it happen in the game. There's plenty of Reddit posts on it, there's plenty of screenshots of it. It's happening. Why can't we revisit bringing hacking back into Planetside 2? And I mean, we're talking, or not back into, but into Planetside 2. This is something that they had teased many, many years ago at this point. I mean, when did they last tease vehicle hacking? In 2013, T-Ray was tweeting photos of Mag Riders in a red flame camo with the TR logo on them. I think shortly after that, they actually produced a little video from their internal testing system, which showed a infiltrator walk up to an enemy main battle tank, and then all of a sudden it changed colors and they drove off in it. So this is something that has been kicked around with Planetside 2 for a long time. It would give infiltrators in the game something else to do. Again, if you can't hack it when somebody's in it, that would mean more of a reason for pilots to stay in their vehicles and not hop out and repair all the time. And it might provide a little more synergy between drivers and gunners of vehicles to ensure that someone's always in it so that it doesn't accidentally get hacked or whatnot. But I mean, I think we're getting to the point in the game's life where that would be kind of a fun thing for people to be able to do. And as you can see, there's a, quote unquote workaround to hack a vehicle in the game right now. Again, I use hack in quotes there because playing an NSO character and a friend, and then your friend logging out, and then the NSO character switching factions in order to have the vehicle on a different faction is not necessarily, in the game terms of hacking. It's more outside, using the system to your benefit, hacking type of deal. But I mean, why can't we have vehicle hacking within Planetside 2? Obviously, it's possible if NSO characters can do it, and we know obviously it's possible because they make NSO characters switch factions all the time, so a character can be on more than one faction. So I think vehicle hacking is something that should be in Planetside 2, and it surprises me all the time that it's not in Planetside 2, since vehicle hacking and door hacking were such core elements of the original Planetside that it still surprises me to this day that they're not in Planetside 2. So now that you know how to hack an enemy main battle tank, I expect some of my listeners to go out there and do it, and I'd love to see screenshots when it happens. But with that, let's move on to our fourth and final topic this week. So last up this week, I want to talk a little bit about Arshee's most recent Planetside 2 debate night. This happened on Friday, and believe it or not, he went almost 8.5 hours live on Twitch doing a debate night with a lot of people that he considers veterans to the game and people who know what's going on within Planetside 2. A lot of skilled players were involved in this, but then he had his entire audience involved in it as well. Again, over 8 hours of stuff. I think it was like 8 hours and 15 minutes that he went, which, in my opinion, Arshee, if you're listening, it was a little long. I think you probably could have done, or probably should have done, multiple different debate nights and limited each of them to an hour each, because let's be honest, the Planetside 2 community doesn't have the longest attention span. I don't have the longest attention span, I'm not going to lie. I was able to watch some of this because I forget what the heck I was doing, but I was able to have it on in the background while I was doing some other stuff and was able to listen to maybe a quarter of it. Again, that's how long this went. It went for 8 hours. I probably saw about 2 hours of it. If anybody out there went the full 8 hours, huge kudos to you. But what I thought was very good about this was that first Arshee reached out to the community and asked them to pose a whole bunch of different questions or mechanics within the game that they don't like or think should be improved or things like that. And he really did a good job reaching out to the community to bring together a whole bunch of topics that the community could debate, so that way the developers could hear what the community is saying and then maybe take some of this feedback back to the table and perhaps work on some of these various things. And the other nice thing that Arshee did was during the stream, he made sure that the community was fully interactive on this, because with every suggestion that came up, he had a poll going and everybody was able to vote. Everybody who was in his Twitch chat was able to vote on it and actually put forth their thoughts regarding each of these different things. And now I'm sure most people can't watch the full 8 hours like I did yesterday and today so that I could capture a lot of the stuff that they talked about. But I did want to go over the various different polls that were asked and what the outcomes of them were for anybody who was curious. I know Arshee had done screenshots of every single poll and that he would be providing those to the developers so they were aware. But again, I'm going to go through the different stuff that was talked about on his debate night. So the first one was regarding the Beetlejuice heat mechanic, and there was a pretty spirited debate back and forth whether it needs to be changed, it needs to be updated, if it's too OP, things like that. And ultimately, the question was posed to the community, does the Beetlejuice's heat mechanic need to be looked at? And it barely eked out a no. I think it was like 51 to 49% that no, the Beetlejuice's heat mechanic should not be looked at. But clearly, it seems like people on other factions think the Beetlejuice's heat mechanic should be looked at, while VS players don't think that it needs to be looked at and are satisfied with it. But regardless, that was the outcome of that. And that moved into a debate on the faction directive weapons, directive LMGs, the Beetlejuice, the Godsaw, and the Butcher. And if the question was posed, which of those three do you feel is the worst performing, needs to be looked at the most, etc.? And by far, the Butcher came out on top, where everybody wanted the devs to do a new look at the Butcher because it doesn't really have a signature thing to it more than anything else. They moved on from there and asked the community whether they felt the game should introduce more directive weapons or more assert-based weapons, and everything was split pretty evenly, with the majority of people saying that they want to see both of those things in the game itself. They want to see more directive weapons, and they also want to see more cert-based weapons. And when we say cert-based, that means you can purchase the weapon with certs or Daybreak cash. But clearly, people are always clamoring for new weapons within the game itself. They moved on from there. Since the Butcher was mentioned previously, there was a lot of talk about the Terran Republic and whether they needed more faction flavor to them. Because, we all know that the VS have their accurate energy weapons. The NC, the NC have their slow but hard hitting weapons, and then the TR have their fast firing weapons, and that's the faction mechanic of the TR, is being able to throw a lot of bullets down range. And there was a lot of talk about how that has become less and less of a TR only flair within the game itself, especially with the various NS weapons that you can purchase in the game. Like there was a lot of talk about how the TR used to have the only pistol in the game that could shoot full auto, and then they added the pilot to the game, and that changed that. Or not the pilot to the game, but they added a pistol slot weapon that could shoot full auto, and therefore that took away some of the TR's faction flavor. So the majority of people felt that, yes, the TR needs a new mechanic within the game itself to make them more unique. And that moved into the next question, which faction needs more unique abilities? Again, everybody thinks the VS are pretty set where they are, but the TR got 44% of that vote, and the NC got 37% of that vote. So again, it feels like the community is satisfied with VS is, but they want to see more unique abilities added to both TR and at a lesser extent to NC. Then there was a question about emphasis on faction coloring and unique looks, with a lot of talk about how we're devolving in the game away from being able to easily identify who you're fighting against. And the question was, should they force faction colors more specifically, and maybe fix some of these camos so that they show more, a red, a blue, or a purple on them. And again, just to make it easier to differentiate between factions. And the surprising answer to that one was that no one, the main winner on that was that people didn't think that we needed to have emphasis on faction coloring or unique looks for each of the factions, which was a little surprising to me. Moving on from there, they asked, what should the devs focus on next? And that would it be refreshing some of the existing things in the game itself, or add new features to the game itself? And it was a huge unanimous on this one that now that we've got things like the Bastion in the game, things like the Colossus in the game, and all the new outfit stuff that's in the game, that we're fine on new features right now. And of course, I just did the whole last segment on vehicle hacking. So there is that. But the majority of people felt that at this point, they should be working on refreshing existing features within the game rather than introducing brand new stuff to the game itself. Then they moved on to the new player experience, and it was pretty much unanimous that new player experience should be a priority for the devs. They then moved on to mouse acceleration in aircraft, and the consensus there was that there should be a toggle on and off for aircraft regarding mouse acceleration. Then there were some questions regarding maxes within the game itself and which ones needed a rebalance. And by far, NC and NSO were tied at the top there, with the majority of people thinking that both the NSO and NC maxes really need to be strengthened at this point. I think a lot of people feel the NSO max is kind of an afterthought max, and the NC max was nerfed a little too hard in the last time that they were dropped. So, I mean, I think people agree now that the NC max is probably the worst of the three maxes and needs to be strengthened. Next, there was a question regarding the crouch meta within the game itself, and is it detrimental to the game? And people suggested that maybe crouch meta does need to be looked at. I mean, 52% of people said it did, as opposed to 48 people who said it didn't. So, I mean, it's pretty evenly split on the status of crouch within the game itself. Then moving on from crouch, they asked questions about infiltrator cloaking. Should it be looked at within the game itself? And I think the talk about this one was more not just general infiltrator cloaking, but, well, it was general infiltrator cloaking because they talked about being able to one-shot kill people as infiltrator, but it also moves into things like flashes cloaking and ants cloaking and things like that. But the majority of people, 64%, felt that cloaking at this point is fine within the game, and kind of kind of keep that as it is. Next, they talked about debris in the game itself, which the majority of people felt it was OP. They next talked about nanoweave armor and whether it should be kept as is or reworked, and the vast majority, 72%, felt that nanoweave should be left alone as it is in game. They then moved on to what should RPG focus on next, and the options were Combined Arm Experience, the NSOs, the new player tutorial, none of the above, or construction. No surprising, construction was in last place. I think most people are satisfied with construction, but Combined Arms was number one at 27%, NSO 2 at 24%, and also the new player tutorial tied at second at 24%. But it's interesting that people still are hung up on the Combined Armed Experience as much as they are within the game itself. Next, they talked about making more of an emphasis on outfit systems, and I was surprised they asked this question at all, since we just got the huge outfit update within the game. And I think a lot of people agreed with me, because the majority of them said keep everything going at its current pace. You know, you don't need to focus on more emphasis on the outfit systems. Next, they moved on to the Banshee, because a lot of people are complaining about the Banshee within the game itself. And it was a close one on this one. 50% said keep it as is. 45% said decrease its current effectiveness. And I think one person said increase its effectiveness, because they were just trolling. So, I mean, it's kind of split whether it should be looked at or not. I think I'd kind of feel towards the decrease. If it had been far away, keep it as is, like 80%, then I wouldn't say anything. But the fact that decrease was almost equal to keeping it as it is, it just shows the difference between, it feels to me, TR players and non-TR players. Then they talked about main battle tanks and asked if any of them should be looked at, and the options were the NC one does, the TR one does, the VS does, none of them do, or all of them do, and the consensus was that all three need to be looked at with their current state. 68% of the people voted that all MBTs should be looked at. Then they talked about the Valkyrie and being able to use lock-on rockets from within the Valkyrie, and a lot of people felt that that was way too overpowered. 75% felt that RPG needs to reduce the lock-on capability of the Valkyrie within the game. And then finally, there was some talk about which ESFs need to be looked at the most regarding air-to-air combat. And the options obviously were all, then they listed each of the three ESFs and then none. So the Reaver needs to be looked at the least, according to everybody who voted, whereas people felt all three need to be looked at equally the most, and that garnered 37% of the voting. After that, Mosquito and Scythe were the next two as to what should be looked at. But again, it feels like a lot of people think the air-to-air game needs to be looked at for all three Empire-specific fighters. But all in all, it was an 8-hour show, which was way too long. And again, kudos to anybody who did the entire thing. But I mean, that was a full work day's worth of show. And I would love to see Arshee do more of these, but I would love to see him, have everything in advance all set out, and then have his questions already, his poll questions already, in the hopper and ready to go, rather than typing them, figuring them out live on stream, because that definitely took some additional time. And then I felt like the time limits for some people, when they had a lot of experience on these, was disappointing that they got cut off with things that they probably still had to say. But again, all in all, I thought it was pretty good, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of these in the future. But just like I said, maybe only an hour long, not 8 hours long. That's just my opinion. But that's going to wrap up my topics for this week's show. So let's roll into housekeeping this week.
Hello? Housekeeping. Hello? Fuck. Sorry, bro.
All right, no emails this week, so that is going to be it for this week's show. As always, how can you get in touch with me or the show itself? Well, you should visit my website, which is www.instantactionpodcast.com. You should email me at instantactionshow@gmail.com. Remember, I will read your email and respond on the show itself. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. But in closing, if you enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as the Instant Action button. Derringer out.